Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar introducing the survey respondent score with TryMyUI, MeasuringU, and QuestionPro. We have a great lineup today. We're really excited to introduce this content to you, to share with QuestionPro customers and other visitors a new tool, a new feature based on an integration with the company TryMyUI, UI testing specialists, and we're going to show how we can measure survey usability and respondent fatigue. And we're going to also talk about, we're going to set the foundation for why that's important. I've got three guests. Jeff Sorrow, founding principal of MeasuringU, which is a company providing statistics and usability consulting to Fortune 1000 companies. He's also the author of over 20 journal articles and 5 books on statistics and the user experience. Hello, Jeff. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited to have you here. We also have Ritvij Gautam, the CEO and co-founder of TryMyUI, where Rit is creating a tool that can be leveraged to extract insights on the usability of interfaces across platforms, devices, and systems. Rit and his team aim to create better ways of extracting and analyzing qualitative feedback to erode the user onboarding barrier. Ritvij, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, James.
And last but certainly not least, the CEO of QuestionPro, Eric Cotto, who is also our resident data junkie with over 15 years of digital and analytical leadership, and he has a passion for predictive analytics and quantitative research-based decision-making. It's also rumored that he likes long walks on moonlit beaches and pina coladas. Welcome, Eric.
I thought we weren't going to talk about the moonlit beaches.
I couldn't help it. It's just such a great bio line.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Nice to have everyone joining, and thanks to Rit and Jeff for joining as well.
Yeah, very good. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about survey design and usability. Eric's going to lead us off there. Then we're going to go into the actual survey respondent score, this new model we're debuting during this presentation. And then Ritvij will also introduce the TryMyUI integration and give us a demo so we can see how everyone uses it. And then we're going to follow up with some Q&A at the end. So as you are listening to the presentation and questions come up, go ahead and type them into the question box that's part of the GoToWebinar interface, and we'll be able to get to those questions. So Eric, why don't we get started?
All right. Thanks a lot, James. Just want to give a brief introduction about survey design and usability and really where this new integration came from. So it's actually a true story is how this all started. This was in 2012. In QuestionPro, we actually used TryMyUI to test our survey interface, our software itself, for internal feedback. And you see the screenshot there, just a little bit about TryMyUI. Ritvij will tell you more and show you more, but what it allows you to do is set up user tasks and then put these users to your website, and you get a live recorded video of the user interacting with your website. So really interesting qualitative feedback on users going through a process on your website. So we use this for QuestionPro to test our survey creation and sending process, something that's obviously very important to us as a company. And we discovered a major usability problem pretty quickly. We sent 5 users through, and 3 of them were confused by something. We saw it very clear when we watched the videos. I think what's interesting about this problem, though, is this is something that we look at our web analytics regularly. And this is something that never would have come up in our web analytics. It simply wasn't a fatal enough flaw to show as a terrible conversion rate in web analytics. So we didn't see it there. We also take close to 15,000 chat sessions a year for customer support and helping our customers through the survey creation process. What's interesting about that is this particular problem was coming up, but it was getting, you could say, miscoded. Our customers are coming to us and saying, hey, there's something wrong with your email sender. And in fact, there's nothing wrong with our email sender. There was just one step in the process getting to it that was confusing people. So we're getting kind of miscoded feedback around this. And, so 14,000 chat sessions couldn't tell us that, but just 5 live user videos told us that immediately. So, our reaction to this was like, wow, that's great. That's a super cool feature. Really, really great. I wonder if our customers could use that. So that's when we contacted the TryMyUI folks and started talking to them about what we could do to turn the TryMyUI experience onto the actual survey taking process, so you could ask your survey respondents to interact with the survey and capture live videos. So as we began talking, talk to the usability experts and ask them to take give us their opinion on what survey usability would mean to them. And so Jeff will talk more about this, but we came up with a number of dimensions that we thought really adversely impacted the survey taking experience. And now, just to frame up some of this discussion, really the goal of any survey is to capture good data. What we want is a high quality of data and a high volume of data. We want few dropouts and we want accurate responses. And so we put these kind of through the lens of fatigue, which is clearly something everyone knows about: length, repetitiveness, complexity, clarity. And clarity is really about, is the question clear? And then answerability is really, can I answer this question that you've stated to me? So these were three of the angles that we used to frame up this problem of survey usability. So common problems, and I think a lot of people who are in the research space or doing anything with surveys have seen a lot of best practices around survey creation, question creation, survey structure. We in fact do a lot of this ourselves. Thon Theory is frequently commenting on the blog about this, or bringing up best practices in the training sessions that we do. And so there's a long list of them here, but I think what's kind of interesting to illustrate is even though you've heard about these before and you've read about them, you won't always implement them correctly. So I think what we're trying to do is get past the best practices and actually ask your users to tell you how they're thinking and feeling about the survey. And I think what really a lot of this comes down to, not entirely, but what a lot of this comes down to is the concept of error blindness. As we as researchers, as marketers, as human resource managers, we get focused on a goal in getting our data back, and we don't always see kind of the obvious mistakes. I think that purple box sort of illustrates it. What's the error there? Well, the first thing we'll do is look through that numeric sequence and try to find what's missing, or the pattern that is violated. Of course, the number sequence is perfectly fine. It's that the word mistake is misspelled. It's M-I-T-S-A-K-E. And I think that illustrates some of the problems that we experienced when we used TryMyUI, and I think problems that all of us will encounter as researchers and as practitioners. The best practice is help, but they won't always catch errors, and they won't always give you the feedback that your users are going to give you. This, however, is much larger than just catching errors. I think that's one dimension of usability. It's sort of the most obvious dimension. It's the most painful dimension when you catch an error. But this goes much deeper than just catching errors. What we wanted to really do, in addition to the great qualitative feedback that you get through the TryMyUI tool, is to really say, hey, can we quantify usability? What can we really do to put a finer point on this? And how does survey design affect data quality and even dropout rates? So what we did is we took a number of the most kind of common variables in survey design: the length, the number of open-ended questions, rows in a matrix table, page breaks, progress bars, instructions, a number of these different dimensions, and set up a test matrix in the attempt to look at, given different survey structures, can we tell you how a respondent is going to feel about their willingness and the quality of data they'll provide back on this survey. And that's really what led into the development of the survey respondent score, which is kind of one of the major things we want to showcase today. So we partnered with Jeff Sorrow at MeasuringU, who is our kind of expert in stats and test design, and really took this to the next level with Jeff. And I think this is kind of a perfect segue to jump over to Jeff's deeper analysis of survey structure and the survey respondent score.
Okay, great. So thank you for that segue, and I'll get right into the technical details of what's going on. So what we're doing here is creating a new instrument. An instrument is just a fancy word that psychometricians give for basically questionnaires. But the process of validation, of making sure the instrument is valid and reliable, there's basically 4 steps we go through. One is we come up with this list of items that we were just talking about, Eric mentioned, and then we want to test those items with a group of candidate participants to figure out which of these items tend to stick together well, which correlate well together, which ones maybe are not performing well. Then we look to winnow down this larger set of items down to a more finite set that stick together, that are cohesive. We look at the factor structure. Is this a one-dimension construct that we're measuring, or are there multiple dimensions? We're certainly thinking of multiple dimensions of answerability, clarity, ease, and fatigue, but is that how people respond? And then finally, we're going to look at reliability. That is how consistently participants are responding to these items. And then validity. Is it measuring what's intended to measure? In this case, that's the actual difficulty of a survey. And then, more importantly, things like data quality and the actual respondent rate or abandonment rate. So going through this process, we start with our candidate items, which we came up with here. As Eric mentioned, we've got 13 of them. And a combination of looking at the literature, looking at coming up with how to get at each of these constructs. And we had a number of participants, 500, a little over 500. What we did is we randomly assigned 500 participants, 511, to one of 5 surveys. In each of these surveys, these elements that we suspected would cause increased survey fatigue or difficulty in completing the survey, dropping off progress bars and things like that. We sort of nefariously manipulated these from easy to hard in 5 surveys. People were randomly assigned, then they were given those 13 candidate items, and then we wanted to see which ones worked. So the first step in that next stage of winnowing is we look at what's called the item total correlation. It's basically looking at what's the total average of all the items and which one of these items tends to best correlate with that overall average. And we want high correlation. We want things that generally stick together here. So first thing we're looking for is items that have low correlation, so we drop those. So for example, one item here, to understand the questions I had to work hard. Now I have positive there because we had to rephrase this one. And as suspected, we tried to keep most of these positively phrased, and it's sort of a known issue of late that the negatively worded items tend to have problems with things like item total correlations, even though maybe the phrasing is right. So this was one that was a good candidate for dropping out, as was a couple other ones. But after dropping those out, we have 10 items, and those 10 items all have generally high item total correlations. And the internal consistency reliability, which goes by a measure using something called Cronbach alpha, was very high. That means 0.93. That means people are generally responding consistently to the same items, regardless of the survey there. Well, the survey is going to affect that. Now, the next process we looked at in the winnowing is to see, well, is there one underlying construct here, or are there multiple constructs? So we use a technique called factor analysis, which is a staple of a psychometric technique called classical test theory, or CTT. And even though we put in multiple items, what the factor analysis is suggesting is that, in fact, people are responding to these all as though it's one factor. The graph that you've got here I'm showing is something called a scree plot. It gets its name from, I don't know if any of you climb mountains or have been to mountains. We're here in Denver, Colorado, so we have lots of mountains. And even though I didn't come up with the name of the graph, but a scree plot is basically, a scree is where the rocks actually fall and kind of collect at the bottom of the mountain. But where there's a break, if you will, in the scree is where it's one visual technique to identify how many factors there are. So because as soon as the scree starts, there's only one, the first break means that there's one factor or one underlying construct, some overall difficulty rating. And there's some more sophisticated techniques that I use something called a parallel analysis, which confirm that despite there being 3 overall factors, in fact, people respond as one underlying factor. So it's a one-factor solution, meaning the average of these 10 items provides one overall cohesive score. The next technique I used as part of winnowing is another technique of test construction and psychometric validation called item response theory. And this is a relatively newer technique, but instead of looking at just the overall score, you're actually looking at how each of the items perform and how well they discriminate and how well they fit to something called a Roche model. And what I've got here is a graph of, on the left side are all how everybody responded to each of those surveys, and on the right side I have a truncated version of each of the questions. And there's a few things that we want to look at here, but what is unique about what IRT does is it takes the raw scores that participants provide and does something called a logit transformation. It basically takes ordinal data and converts it into a nice interval scale, which allows us to get a better separation between the items. But the first thing we notice here is that some of these items are basically discriminating the same way, and I've called out here as these 3 items. Did you have enough information to answer it? I could answer easily, and the questions were clear. Basically, all 3 of those questions are discriminating at about the same level of difficulty here, and so they're redundant. So they're items to drop, as well as some of these in here which are repeated. The other thing that this IRT is showing us is that even though this pretest, we're seeing good results here, there's a lot of participants up at the high end of the scale here. So for easy experiences, the items are not really discriminating well against very easy surveys. So sort of future research we could look at, is there a way that we can get items that are more difficult to agree with, especially for easier surveys? Harder surveys, we could see there are plenty of people past here, so we're in good shape there. Back to the factor structure. So even though it is a underlying unidimensional construct, I went ahead and try and force and say, well, can we look to see are there 2 dimensions? And what we're able to see is that of those 10 items and then those earlier ones that were redundant from the item response theory, I dropped 3 because they were providing very similar information, and we're already having participants answer a survey, so we want as short as short a set of items as possible here. And we do see a semblance of a structure here. We do have basically what we're calling fatigue and clarity factors here. These first 5 items are loading on a fatigue factor, and these 2 on clarity. And you name factors based upon basically just how the phrasing of the items, so you could see that load on the factor. So I could understand the questions easily, and the questions are clear. You could see how those are clarity type questions. But you'll see that the fatigue factor is explaining the overwhelming majority of the variance, 68, 70%, and then clarity is just adding a little bit there. So there's nothing wrong with breaking these things out into multiple dimensions, but it also suggests that the overall survey response score with just 7 items is actually going to provide a reliable and cohesive measure. So the next measure after reliability, we're looking at that final step of validity here, again, as the set of items, the final set of items able to discriminate. Well, here's the sort of Frankenstein surveys that we created from difficult to easy. This is the survey respondent score, higher is better, lower is worse. So survey 1 was the survey that had the most items, that didn't have a progress bar, there was no introduction questions, made it generally difficult. And in contrast, survey 5 is one that just had a handful of questions, progress bar is pretty straightforward. So what we're seeing here is statistical differences between each step along the way, suggesting, hey, this 7-item average SRS is doing a pretty good job of discriminating across those surveys, which is great. So we've got internal reliability, people responding similar, it's able to discriminate between hard and easy surveys. There is actually a number of ways to establish validity, and we can go on. A really robust instrument has multiple ways of establishing validity. And the 3 types are this tripartite model of validity called criterion validity, content, and construct validity. Content validity is essentially what we started with by saying, hey, we think these items get at what we mean by answerability, fatigue, and the difficulty in going through a survey. And what we've been able to establish in this pretest is something called concurrent validity. What we looked at was, in addition to we took the SRS score and we correlated it with the actual abandonment rate, or conversely, the completion rate, if you will. That is the number of participants who were invited and started taking the survey who actually went through. And that abandonment rate, or the completion rate varied from each of those surveys as well, from a low about 59% to a high of about 88%. And what we found is that there's a high correlation between the SRS and this completion or abandonment rate, also establishing concurrent validity. So it's getting at what we want to measure. A harder survey, not surprisingly, leads to more people not completing it. So that high correlation made us feel pretty good about that. So wrapping this up, we've got good predictive validity, and we want to continue the research on this, but for now we've got these 7 items that will do a good job predicting the response rate, do a good job discriminating between different levels of survey, and correlate highly with manipulated items like the number of items and open-ended items in a questionnaire. And then this is going to be included as part of TryMyUI, and I'll hand it over after I plug my book. You guys can take a look at. I just came out with Customer Analytics for Dummies, where I, from a slightly higher level, talk a little bit about questionnaire construction. And you can get it now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I will transition back over to you guys for the next stage.
Jeff, that was amazing. Thank you. For those non-data techie people in the audience, which I'll admit freely that I'm one of, that was a lot. So thank you for that. You have is a huge data scientist here on the panel, so if you want to ask questions, please ask those questions. Let's talk about now maybe the front end of this process and how this new integration with TryMyUI can help make a difference. So I'm going to reintroduce Ritvij.
Hey, James. Thank you very much for having me, and also I want to thank you, Eric, and thank you, Jeff, for really laying out just a beautiful groundwork. So a couple of my introductory slides are going to be a little bit of a repetition, but worth going through nonetheless. So TryMyUI is a crowdsourced user interface usability testing tool. And what that mouthful really means is we help you, we find people from all around the world, we demographically curate them, and we help you put your website or your web app or your product in front of your target user so that you can get feedback and you can watch your target user use your product and see exactly how usable it is to them. Because largely what happens is design decisions, especially if they're only made in-house and they're tested in-house, right? They are largely not an accurate representation. They don't take into account of what a layman user or a new user would do on the site, because in-house design decisions are made by people who have privileged knowledge in that they know how the thing is supposed to work. They know the intended use of the product. So once you know that, it's really hard for you to kind of disassociate from that and be like, oh, well, now I'm a new user and these are the challenges open to me. So our product really kind of gives you the user's view. It allows you to get the user's view by putting yourself in the user's shoes. So, and that gets me to my next point. So traditionally when people hear UI testing or usability testing, right, they immediately think of testing a website, a web app, right, a mobile app, and we do, like TryMyUI was doing that. You know, we were like, oh, well, we got desktop testing done, and now obviously the next thing is cross-platform testing, and now we do cross-platform testing too, and now the next thing is, you know, mass scale testing, whatever. But I think I was having a conversation with Eric, and it was like, oh, well, QuestionPro runs 30 million surveys a year. That's 2.5 million surveys a month, and those get used by people. Users see those, but there really hasn't been a way to test these surveys, right? Like, if anything which involves a user has a UI that needs testing, and like there's these 30 million UIs that go out every year from QuestionPro alone that just don't get tested, right? Like, there's so much that could be learned there. That's such an unexplored area, and I was like, oh, well, this is someplace that we need to get into. We need to see firstly, how we would test surveys, and secondly, when we test surveys, what kind of feedback will we get? Then our challenge is leverage our tool, which is right now built for, you know, testing websites and web apps. How do I leverage that? How do I pivot it and change it and modify it to test something like a survey? So before we jump into that, right, people are like, well, wait, is it really a problem? Like you said, 30 million UIs. Is that really an issue that we have? Right? Come on, maybe you're exaggerating, Rit. Well, yeah, it is, because QuestionPro, what QuestionPro is, it's a comprehensive survey tool, right? It gives you the ability to ask all these different kinds of questions. It allows you to, you know, get multiple choice questions. It allows you to get, you know, open free text questions, open response questions. You can ask all kinds of questions. But just because you can ask all kinds of questions doesn't mean you need to ask all of the questions at once, right? You need to find the right questions to ask to your target user to get the feedback that you want to know. So an example is really, I found this survey from an elementary school in the local area, and not elementary, but, you know, junior school, and somebody there thought it was a great idea to be, instead of having 2 drop-down menus for age and gender, to just run through all the permutations and combinations of possible responses. And moreover, the boxes are like select all that apply boxes. They're not multiple choice boxes. So maybe my child is a boy age 1 and a girl age 17. Maybe that, you know, people didn't really take account for that. And then over there, like it's boy girl, and randomly changes to male female male female. Like all of these inconsistencies, they cause cognitive stress. There's a better way to ask this question. There are better ways to ask other questions too. And, you know, really that's what we want to hone in on. We need to make sure that we're asking the right questions. And, you know, and this to me was like stellar proof that that was really an issue. I like the throw-yo analogy. Like, what happens when you have a tool as powerful and as comprehensive as QuestionPro people just go crazy. They're like, oh, you know what? Oh, let me ask a couple of these questions. Let me ask a couple of these questions and sprinkle some nuts on it and get some chocolate chips. And you know, you're just putting all this stuff together. But you need to make sure that, like, after you pile it all up, each of them individually are really powerful and really delicious tools, if you will. But you need to make sure that once you get them together, once you put them together, they're still going to taste good. They're not just going to taste insane. That, for me, was just a great analogy. The question is, how do you get actionable feedback on a feedback mechanism, or meta feedback, as I like to call it? And we broke it down into 3 steps. First, we took surveys, and we broke them down into like the 3 vectors that would cause cognitive stress, right? And Eric laid those out, right? We looked at fatigue, clarity, and answerability. Then after that, the second step was have a psychometrically validated meta survey to assess cognitive stress along these vectors. So, you know, that was really the winnowing down, where we had all of these potential questions. We looked at the correlation, winnowed down, and then we came up with a set of questions that really hone in on these vectors and allow us to assess how the respondents felt about a certain survey. And the third, really, so now you have this, and the first 2 steps together give you the SRS score, and it's this beautiful, beautiful heuristic tool that tells you exactly how usable a survey is. And then the third step is now you cross-reference it with the video of a demographically screened respondent taking your survey. Now, what that does is it allows you to put the SRS heuristic score into a qualitative, more personal context. So if you saw someone just having a really terrible time with the SRS score, like, you know, gave your survey a really bad review, you can go into that person and see, hey, why did this particular person not take my survey properly, or why did they feel my survey was inadequate or unusable, right? Why did this particular person have that issue? And you can find that out by putting yourself in the user's view. So I'm just going to take you through the flow of what it'd be like for you to order a usability test from your QuestionPro dashboard and then view the results. So all you'd have to do, I have a QuestionPro survey pulled up. This is 2014 vacation survey, right? It's got quite a few questions, etc. And now I want to get it tested. So over here, just on your dashboard, you can just click usability test. And again, this tells you what you get. You get a narrated video of each tester answering your survey. You get to watch their mouse movements and keystrokes, and then they will narrate everything they say to you. And really, the bumper there is TryMyUI. We have a demographically curated pool of testers who we screen rigorously to make sure they're good at giving vocal feedback, that they're able to voice their user experience, they're able to vocalize their user experience, and you will be able to hear it from their mouth. And you will also get the written answer to 4 questions about the survey experience. So over here, you get to specify the scenario for your survey. So you get to really talk about, oh, well, you know, for my survey, what frame of mind do I want people to be in? Well, this is a 2014 vacation survey. So I'm going to say, you know, you survey to provide more information about your 2014 vacation plans. And you just hit confirm payment and order tests.
So this is,
it will reach.
So Rich, just to give some relevance here for what we're looking at, this is, as the survey administrator, I'm giving a scenario for the tester as if they were my survey respondent or my survey taker.
Exactly.
That's what that box is for.
The importance of the scenario is to make sure you give the users an engaging, basically a storyline they can role play in, right? You don't want to just be like, hey, take the survey. You want to tell them, hey, this is why you're taking the survey. This is your impetus to take this survey, and you know, give them something to go off of. So now they can put themselves in the shoes of your target respondent. So while they might meet the target demographic, now they would also kind of adopt the frame of mind of someone who fits the profile and persona of someone who would be answering the survey. So once you've ordered the test, it would take a day to come in, but we have some test results for you right here. You'd be able to view the test results straight from the dashboard, right? You just click on one, and it would take you to a video of the test along with these questions as they're presented. And then you would also be able to view the SRS score. And really, this is what the SRS score would look like, right? You'd be it would break down into the 7 questions that we chose, that Jeff chose after the winnowing down process, you can see the total score, like the total SRS score, as well as the SRS score along the vectors that we talked about, the essential vectors of fatigue and clarity. Then over here, you can also see like which particular question had a terrible response. So over here, if I were asked, I would be likely to take the survey again. All the respondents chose not to take the survey again. So you can see that oh well, maybe that's the issue. Maybe my survey is just too long, and it doesn't, like, if I were to ask the same respondent the survey again, they would not take it. And this is something to take into consideration if you're trying to do like an iterative survey process where you're asking them the survey every month, or like some sort of process survey. So you need to take it into account and then make the changes on your end. So really, this gives you the ability to get the user's view, see the survey for what it is through the eyes of a respondent, and figure out how to extract the feedback you want. So after the first 3 steps, step 4 is get the user's view. Thank you.
Thanks, Rit. So we've seen it from both sides, the back end of the scoring model, how that was developed. We've seen it from what happens when you receive the test back, and we've also seen it from the front end of how easy it is, how quickly it is to order. And then just to reiterate, you get the video from each tester, they answer the 4 questions about the survey respondent score, and you get the 3 testers. So thank you to Jeff, Rit, and Eric for joining us today on this information-packed webinar where hopefully you've seen where we've gone through the data science component of this. Thank you to Jeff for helping us develop that model of the survey respondent score. We have the integration with TryMyUI, and that you can easily access. And you don't have to know all of that data science. You can just get right into the benefit of the qualitative and quantitative feedback that you get through the TryMyUI integration. So thank you to everyone. Just really quickly, Jeff, how can visitors learn more about MeasuringU?
Yeah, go to my website, MeasuringU.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. Obviously, if you guys need some advanced measurement help or statistics help, we do that all the time for Fortune 500 companies, so we're happy to help out or even just provide some advice from some high-level things. But if you do need that in-depth measurement techniques, happy to help.
And that was Customer Analytics for Dummies?
Customer Analytics for Dummies, just out. It's in the big bay. You walk into your local Barnes & Noble this week, or this month. So, yeah, shoot me a line.
That's great.
Hear you guys.
Rivage, if they have their own website that they want to get usability testing done, how can they learn more about TryMyUI?
Yeah, just come to www.trymyui.com, and if there's a free account, and you can sign up for a free trial, so you can just get the first test on your website done for free, and just get right into it and get the user's view. And if you need any more questions, etc., there's a feedback tab on our website. You can just ping into that. I never sleep, and I'm always trolling on that feedback tab, so I will get back to you in a few minutes. So you can reach out to us, and also just follow us on Twitter. We generate a lot of content just about usability testing and user experience, etc. You can follow us on Twitter and at TryMyUI, and also check out our blog.
Excellent. All right, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. If you're not a QuestionPro customer yet, it's free to sign up for QuestionPro. If you have a question you'd like to ask first, that live chat that Eric mentioned is not just for customers. It's also for those who have questions about using QuestionPro. So you certainly can jump on there and ask those questions as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we hope to catch you on our next webinar.